I discovered my wife's long-term affair with her boss, which shattered my worldview. I thought our marriage was unbreakable until I uncovered her double life. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I'm not sure how some people can honestly justify a fraudster who has been cheating on his wife and entire family for months. I don't understand how this is unjust. Fortunately, my wife proved to be a real snake in the realm of traders, and I had to confront her to avoid losing my entire family. The phone rang loudly next to Eric Daniels, who was asleep. He jolted awake. "What the hell?" he murmured. The telephone rang again. He took up the receiver. "Hello," he managed with a growly low cough. "Mr. Daniels?" "Yeah, this is Officer Harrison with the Yukon County Police Department. Can I speak with Mrs. Thompson, please?" In Gibson's ear, an authoritative voice demanded attention. "Who is this?" "Mr. Gilson. Please put Mrs. Thompson on. This is a police emergency." The tone was obvious and strong. Daniels responded by mumbling for a little moment. He passed the phone to the sleeping woman lying beside him. "This is for you." "It is the police," he replied, simply what she seized the phone from him. "Hello, good morning, my cheating wife." An extremely upbeat voice rang forth. "I hope you got a good night's sleep when you and your sweetheart finished last night." "Oh my God, Jamie. Is it you, Jamie? Do not doubt it. Honey, I'm calling to give you some information. You might need Jamie, please," she implored. "First and foremost, you can dispose of your house key. It doesn't function anymore. Oh, and I changed the garage door code to Jamie. Please. It's not as you think," she cried. "Rebecca, you don't know what I think, but I'm not phoning to discuss it. I am just phoning to let you know that your credit cards are no longer valid. You can also pick up your clothes and toiletries from the plastic containers behind the side gate at any time." His voice became icy. "No, Jamie, please do not do this, please," his wife begged urgently. "It's too late, my dears, it's already finished, but where shall I go?" she cried in the legendary words of Rhett Butler. "To be honest, my love, I don't give a damn." In rage, he hung up the phone. "I started the process several weeks ago, but this morning was key. If I hadn't known she was sleeping in Gibson's room, I wouldn't have tried this act." I was surprised by how quickly it worked and how empty this moment seemed. I believe that was a victory too little too late. Let me clarify the situation. My name is James M.C. Thompson. I am 43 years old and work as a sales representative for a building products distributor. I have been with the same employer for over 20 years. I married Rebecca Becky almost exactly 20 years ago. We were meant to celebrate our 20th anniversary next month. I felt our marriage was successful, since we had 2 great children. Our first, Emily, my angel, was born a year and a half after we married, and our son, Daniel, arrived 2 years later. I had an unconditional love for my wife and children. They were my reason for existence. No guy could have been more proud of his family than I was. We lived in a modest house with everything a family could wish. The house had 3 bedrooms and was split level. Our second house purchase was made 4 years ago. It wasn't new, but we had labored to update and personalize it. First a new kitchen, then a finished basement with a workshop for me and a spacious family room for the kids to enjoy. We started with a garage where we put our automobiles, then added new furnishings to the living and dining rooms. I believed we lived the perfect life. I met Rebecca in the 11th grade of high school. She was a beautiful blonde with a nice shape, and it was difficult not to notice her. She did, however, try out for the cheerleading squad. She did not make the team. I played wide receiver on the football team and believed we'd be a good fit. I asked her out on a date shortly after school began in the autumn, and she consented. We dated for several months, during which time Rebecca developed into a really gorgeous young woman. Her figure evolved in a way that drew the attention of many people, including me. I assumed we had a steady relationship, but I never confirmed it with Rebecca before I knew it. Our quarterback, Eric Gilson, had asked her out and she accepted. I was confused and disappointed, since I assumed we were a couple, but I was obviously mistaken. Eric was our team star. He was a skilled senior with a strong arm and a fierce desire to win that I had never witnessed before. As a quarterback, he was a coach's dream and nightmare. He possessed incredible talent and a bold attitude, yet he couldn't follow commands. Everyone on the team was aware that Eric was not a team player. Eric was all about himself. Our team won that season, but I pondered how much better we could have played if Eric had followed the coach's script rather than making it up as he went. Despite his talent, he lacked discipline and was a source of frustration for those of us who followed him. Eric frequently boasted that he had slept with each cheerleader at least once. I was grateful to Rebecca for not being a cheerleader, but I wasn't sure it would keep her safe. There was no point in becoming angry at Gilson. He was a relentless womanizer, nothing personal, simply closeness. I was upset that Rebecca had fallen for him, but there was nothing I could do. Eric would be gone next year, but Rebecca and I would still be here. Perhaps there was still an opportunity for me. It did not happen. I began dating Catherine Hallocker because our classroom placement was usually alphabetical. Catherine frequently sat behind me and Kay kept an eye on me. Catherine was a pleasant girl, but she was not what I was looking for. I expected something more exciting from Miss Hallocker, but that was unrealistic. We got along well and I believe she was impressed that a footballer was interested in her, but that was it. In the spring I started looking for someone else. Meanwhile, Gilson had dumped Rebecca for another female, leaving her available once more. I contemplated it, but given how she had abandoned me, I opted to ignore her. By the end of the year, she had met someone else and I was left out once more. The 12th grade was different. Peter Davis took over as quarterback for our team and proved to be everything. Eric Gilson wasn't. He was a leader and a true team player. He sought us out to see who could best do what. It occurred to me several times that this guy could be a good coach. He understood what it takes to win and how to maximize the team's potential. The results were outstanding. I was catching passes more effectively than ever before and we were regularly winning. When Peter entered the huddle, everyone became hushed as he announced the play and confirmed the snap count. Everything was new to me and I loved it. I continued to avoid Rebecca, still nursing my wounded pride from the Daniels episode. It didn't surprise me when Peter started dating her. Despite his abilities and leadership, he was a quiet guy who was difficult not to like. In an odd sense, I felt comfortable about them. If I couldn't be with her, Peter was the next best option. I assume she felt the same way. Rebecca wasn't the most intelligent girl in school. In fact, she barely passed with AC average and, like many of her colleagues, immediately entered the industry after graduation. She never intended to attend college. Probably conscious of her limitations, she found a job as a bank teller in the shopping mall. After graduating, I lost contact with her. I was off to college, thinking of playing football, drinking beer with the boys and dating only the loveliest girls who would be excited to be with a football hero by Christmas. Reality had sunk in. I was failing 3 classes and while I had thoroughly loved my time on the football field, the rest of my college career was significantly less fun. There were no girls waiting to date me. The beer was downtown and cost too much for my tight budget. Classes were difficult and I struggled to accept that my education was totally my responsibility. There was no one to check my attendance or make sure I finished my homework. It was an entirely different universe. The grades posted at the end of the term were disappointing. I was at risk of failing. I told myself no football, no girlfriends next semester. I may as well be serious. It was not easy. It was a completely new lifestyle for me. It was a challenge. I made it through, but just barely with 1 year of college behind me. I questioned whether this was what I wanted to do for the next 3 years. Since I was debating it, the answer seemed clear: no. I was able to secure employment in a city office every morning. I rode the bus, worked for 9 hours and then took the bus home within a few months. I realized this could not be my future. I needed something more. I stuck with it for about 2 years, but I was constantly yearning for anything better. If you had asked me what my job would be when I graduated from high school, I would have had no idea. I certainly would not have contemplated sales. My picture of a salesman was someone who went door-to-door offering brushes, kitchenware and periodicals. That was obviously not me. When I learned about industrial sales, I received a fresh viewpoint. It entailed completely understanding your product, demonstrating that it was as good as, if not better, than the one the clients were already using and convincing them to buy it. What piqued my interest even more was the technological part. I rapidly recognized that sales required strategy, identifying what you have that the customer requires and why they would like to purchase it from you. I applied for a transfer to one of the operational branches and got a job at the sales desk, an indoor job. It was the beginning, and as I observed more I felt more persuaded that this was the career for me. I began working without a car and continued to live at home. Even after relocating to the operating branch, nothing has changed. I was a newcomer with a small salary who commuted by bus to and from work. When I got my first paycheck, I realized it was time to create a bank account. Until then I'd been living paycheck to paycheck and I needed to alter that for convenience. I chose a bank near my bus stop and strolled inside. As I reached the customer service counter, I came to a halt. Rebecca Becky. A young woman would soon aid me. I was a little nervous at first, but with a few people ahead of me, I was able to calm down and plan out what I wanted to say. It had been 3 years since I had seen her, yet she was still as charming, as I recalled. Rebecca soon completed servicing the customers ahead of me, and then it was my turn. "Hello, Rebecca." I greeted them as I approached. "She seems astonished to see me in line." "Hello, James." Her response came after a little delay. "How may I serve you today?" "I would want to open an account. I need to deposit my paycheck." "Okay, yeah, let me get someone to assist you," she replied with a smile. "Yeah, thanks, it's good to see you again," I responded softly. "Yeah, it's great to see you too." Her smile appeared sincere. I thought a week later when I returned to the bank to pick up my newly printed checks, I saw Rebecca again. This time she was wondering about maybe delivering mail. As I waited in line, I noticed her thinking about her life. There was only one way of finding out. That was the start of our reconnect ion, and after a few dates, we were right back where we started at 21. I was starting what I anticipated would be a successful career, while Rebecca was looking for a life companion. I proposed the next spring and she accepted. A year later in May, we married, both looking forward to the future. 18 months after our wedding, Emily was born. She became daddy's girl as soon as she arrived, when she was angry or in tears as a child. When I picked her up, she would relax, grin at me and everything would be fine again, though I had always envisaged having a boy. Emma exceeded my expectations. 2 years later our son, Daniel, was born, and I couldn't be happier as a father. Rebecca was Daniel's particular parent, while Emily was the closest to me. It felt like the perfect family. Rebecca regularly voiced her satisfaction with our life together. We did, however, face some challenges. They were ephemeral and I counted myself quite fortunate, a stunning wife and 2 lovely children. What else could I ask for? I was pleased when I was assigned a new sales region soon after Emily's birth. I thrived in my new position and within a few years my pay had virtually doubled from when I first started at Polar. Success led to more success and I quickly earned far more than I had imagined. 5 years into our marriage, we were able to buy our first home, a small bungalow that became completely ours. Rebecca lovingly decorated it, sifting through publications for ideas. Emily and Daniel also had their say, but Rebecca's touch tied the decor and colors together. I could only stand there in astonishment, amazed at how beautifully our family had come together. We celebrated our 10th anniversary in that same house with about 30 guests. I was proud of my accomplishments, but especially of my family. Our children excelled in school and were well behaved. My wife thrived as a homemaker and mom. Both sets of parents loved us. What else could I ask for? Emma's menstrual cycles began at the age of 14. Initially, Rebecca assisted her in understanding and managing the situation. Everything seemed normal at first, but after a few weeks I noticed a difference. Emma appeared to be less connected to her mother than before. It wasn't obvious, but being so close to my baby made me notice. I couldn't figure out why this shift occurred, and discussing it with Rebecca was difficult. She refused to acknowledge the change, rejecting it as my masculine incapacity to grasp female psychology. Despite my concerns, I let it go because it had no effect on the rest of the family. Daniel always seemed to be in balance. He had a close relationship with his mother, and while I adored him as much as Emma, I knew he would go to Rebecca first for major difficulties. This did not concern me. Every family has alliances that should be recognized and honored. My achievements helped me develop in sales, but I understood that sales management might not be my true calling. Nonetheless, I hoped to be considered for such a chance, as my zone was the most productive and profitable. I was curious about the requirements for advancement. It occurred to me that a vacancy would need to open up first. Not long after Emma began high school, Rebecca approached me about returning to work after 16 years as a stay-at-home soccer parent. She wants something more than home tasks. I couldn't think of any reason to oppose, but I urged her to make sure her decision wouldn't interfere with the children's life or our leisure time. She promised me it wouldn't. After a few months of hunting, she obtained a part-time job as a receptionist at a car dealership Monday through Saturday. I work in the mornings from 9 until 1 because I played golf on Saturday mornings. The schedule worked nicely, though the money was low. It enhanced our income and allowed us to save for vacation. My only concern was her satisfaction. Our lives went on for a few more years until Rebecca returned home with worrisome news. "Guess what, Jamie?" She began with obvious hesitancy. "What is it?" "Eric Daniels is back in town." She revealed this while carefully observing my reaction. "Oh, what brought him back?" "His father is a prominent businessman. Eric is now the assistant general manager of his father's dealership." She explained, not as composed as she had imagined. "Which dealership is that?" I asked. Already knowing the answer was. "I mean, I work at Century Ford." She stumbled. "So what exactly does this mean for you?" I inquired, thinking there was more to this narrative. "I've been asked to work as his assistant." She eventually admitted, "Wow, that's a significant move from a part-time receptionist to an assistant general manager." I didn't realize they had such a large team. I said my tone was infused with sarcasm. "You don't sound delighted." She noticed I am not. "You dated Daniels." "I know the type of guy he is. He used to gloat about his victories." "Is your name still on his list?" It was a low blow, and I regretted saying it right away. That is a bad thing to imply. "Do you not trust me?" she demanded. "I don't trust him." I clarify IED fast. Her cheeks flushed with rage, and for the first time in a long time, she was obviously upset. "Jamie, take that back. You have no grounds to accuse me of anything, and you've just implied that I'm untrustworthy," she remarked forcefully. "I never said that. I just said I don't trust him. We both understand the type of person he is. It's been 20 years, yet people like him have not changed," I asserted firmly. I pressed on. "How can working part-time as a receptionist lead to being the boss's assistant in one move? I am truly curious." I demanded. "I got there because I was qualified for the job." She replied, "Eric noticed my potential." "Or are you arguing that I am incapable?" she challenged. I couldn't say I do not work there, but I know this smells like a typical Daniels maneuver. "He is moving you, and you must walk carefully," I warned, standing immediately in front of her. I hoped she grasped my serious fears about Eric Gibson's intent irons. Jealousy sheared. That's what this is about. You don't want me to succeed, because it would reflect negatively on you. The argument was going nowhere and she wasn't listening. I let out a heavy sigh, turned and went down to the basement for a cold beer and some meditation. I was under no illusions about Gibson's goals. He noticed a lovely woman and thought he could easily win her over. What difference did it make if she was married? Perhaps he recalled me from high school and didn't view me as much of a challenge. I vowed to keep a close eye on the situation. It took a week for the tension in the house to relax. Unfortunately, our kids overheard Rebecca and me bickering. We'd both raised our voices. Emma came to find me once everything had settled, when I was alone. "Hey Dad, are you doing all right?" "Hello, Emma." "Yeah, I'm okay," I lied. I couldn't stop hearing the argument she admitted. "Who is this Daniels guy, someone your mother dated in high school?" "He was our quarterback and I played with him for a while." "I was attempting to warn your mother. He is a bad guy who has little regard for women." I said regretfully, "I don't think Mom appreciated hearing that." She said gently, "No, I suppose not. She sees this as a great chance and a major position. She may switch from part-time to full-time work, causing adjustments in our schedule." I speculated. "It's okay, Dad, I can help with food and laundry. Mom is surely going to make a lot more money now, correct, I guess, so we didn't really talk about it. I will simply have to wait and see." "Emma, I hope this isn't a mistake for your mother," I said, wrapping my arm over her and bringing her closer. "I just hope everything turns out well." As I expected. It turned out to be a full-time position with a pay more than double her former wage, so she was fairly compensated for her work. When I politely questioned about Rebecca's everyday activities, I began to have reservations about her work. Her responses were ambiguous, but it appeared that her work lacked structure. According to what I learned, she was supposed to answer quickly whenever Daniels phoned. My fears about her career gradually faded. Rebecca left for work just before 9 every morning and returned home shortly after 5 in the afternoon with no overtime or special responsibilities. This is just a typical job. As a result, we had to make few concessions. My personal work hours were longer, typically leaving home by 7:00 and returning after 6 before anyone else was up. This meant that our family time was primarily limited to evenings and weekends. Our bedtime relationship was no different. Rebecca was somewhat passive in the bedroom. We had intimacy a few times every week, but it was rather standard. I offered her role-playing games and other activities, but she was uninterested. I didn't mind that we had sex twice a week when Daniels emerged. I observed no changes in our bedtime routine, but everything remained the same. I've always tried to be on good terms with our neighbors. It just simplifies things. The McDonald's next to us was older and quieter. Their children were grown and gone, so we didn't have anything in common. We were polite and helpful when needed, but we were not particularly close. On the other hand, the Romans were a different story. Their children were young and Emma frequently babysat for them. We first moved in. We got along well with them and would frequently have backyard barbecues and card parties at each other's homes. Tom and Olivia became our good pals. Jamie worked as an accountant at the town's GM dealership. I had forgotten about it until he came home alone, a vehicle with the dealership's emblem on it. One Sunday morning I noticed Tom trimming the grass and approached him to chat. "Hey, Tom, how are things going?" I began with the usual routine, "Cannot complain." He grinned. "Yeah, I agree, say I have a question for you." I nonchalantly remarked, "Shoot, you work for the dealership. Does the general manager normally have an assistant like an assistant general manager?" "Yes, in large organizations there is generally someone to step in when the boss is not around." "Would that assistant have a personal assistant like a Lady Friday or something?" He gave me an odd look, then appeared to comprehend something and become uncomfortable. "Not generally." He eventually spoke. "I did not think so," I nodded. "Thank you, Tom." I turned to go back home. My assumptions were confirmed. "Jamie, he called out. As he got closer, I came to a stop and spun around. I know what you are thinking. I know a couple of individuals there. Let me see what I can find out quietly. He added in a low tone. I gazed at him for a time before nodding. Thank you again. After all this time, I was left wondering why I had even asked Tom that question. Perhaps I was concerned about what his answer would disclose. There had been no evidence of anything wrong. Yet the thought lingered. Tom knew Rebecca's employer and work title, but he never revealed them to any of us. I'd unexpectedly placed him on the spot and he replied as any good friend would. Despite the fact that Rebecca was no longer working on Saturday mornings, I remained with my early golf regimen. The Saturday, following my conversation with Tom arrived. It was cold and gusty, but thankfully the rain stayed off. We played with our normal foursome. None of us performed very well amongst the biting wind, which exacerbated our pain. We were all relieved to have completed the round and returned to the clubhouse as usual. We regrouped at the 19th hole after changing where convention required that the winners provide drinks for the losers. Today, my boyfriend and I were paying the bill. As I entered the lounge, I noticed Tom Parker sitting alone near the television nursing a drink. I approached him with a smile. I didn't realize you played golf. I said, don't you understand me better than that? He chuckled. What brought you here? I inquired, recognizing the gravity in his demeanor. I wanted to talk to you alone. He replied, his tone serious. I nodded, already suspecting the subject. Let me settle things with the winners. I will be right back. I promised him it wouldn't take long to buy drinks and explained that I needed a moment. Within 5 minutes I had returned to Tom's table, so I presume you heard about my inquiry the other day. I replied, leaning back. I wish I had better news. Jamie. He sighed and avoided eye contact. Give it to me straight, Tom, I can manage it. I responded firmly, concealing my doubt. Daniels must be the most loathed person at that dealership. The folks I spoke with regard him as a dead weight, absolutely useless. He bothers everyone he meets while contributing nothing. Nobody wants him to accomplish anything because he'll mess everything up. This appears to be something he has done previously. Tom paused and took a sip from his drink. Doesn't surprise me. I said quietly. So where does Rebecca fit into this? He gave me a wounded expression. I had never seen him with a more hangdog countenance. He was clearly hesitant to share what he knew. Rebecca spends the majority of her day in his office, occasionally composing letters or bringing him coffee. She acts swiftly just when Daniel Sr. arrives. She then disappears into either the parts department or the workers' lounge. When he leaves, everything returns to normal. Tom explained. It appears that old man Daniels is unaware of Rebecca's true position. I mumbled and Tom only nodded as if he had more to say. Come on, Tom, just tell me you won't bite. I reassured him. They go out for lunch roughly twice a week. They leave well before midday and do not return till 2 or 2:30, he revealed, since she began working there. I inquired, suddenly awake. No, it began a few months ago. He offered one of our smartmouth salespeople followed them one day. They headed to the Carlton Inn on Banner Road. That's quite a trip for lunch, I observed Jamie. The Carlton doesn't even have a restaurant, he explained gently. I felt a constriction inside, making me immovable. My breath came out slowly as I attempted to collect my thoughts. Even though I had anticipated this happening, I was unprepared. It's difficult to determine how long it took until my head cleared enough to think clearly. I apologize, Jamie, he said, his voice falling off. I understand, I coked out. I did not want to hear it either. Later I drank a drink with Tom, remembering the happy times our families had shared. Despite the wonderful recollections, it felt as if we were saying goodbye in some manner. We both seemed to understand that nothing would ever be the same. I felt a strong aching in my gut and a painful realization driving home. I prepared to approach Rebecca, unsure how to handle this discovery. I had been unusually composed with Tom, which struck me as weird, considering the gravity of the situation. I tried to think of situations in which their meals at the Carlton were innocent, but deep down I knew the truth. The appearances are matched. I didn't get really upset until I was halfway home from the golf club. My mind had been flooded with innumerable thoughts and feelings until they crystallized into one terrible realization. She had continually betrayed me, even knowing that I could have been made a fool of, and she had shown no remorse. Day after day she had duped me. At that point my rage began to rise. I take pride in being a sensible thinker who does not act on impulse. I pulled over a few blocks from home knowing I was not prepared to confront Rebecca. Confrontation may not be the wisest option. I was very confident it wasn't. If this was a one-time mistake, we might be able to move on, but it wasn't. This has been going on for a year. Concealed behind Rebecca's happy wife and mother persona, it was a great deception. Sitting in my car, the engine running, I decided that this called for a measured retaliation. I would preserve outward normally, but on Monday I would take steps to stop the charade and seek payback. I was resolved to inflict as much legal damage as possible on Eric Daniels and Rebecca Becky Thompson. This would be done professionally and in accordance with the law, but I would make sure they both paid terribly. I didn't become enraged until I was halfway home from the golf club. My mind had been racing with innumerable thoughts and my emotions were in turmoil until they coalesced into a single terrible realization. She had betrayed me several times, despite knowing the risk existed. I was naive to believe her. She made me a fool without any remorse. She cheated me. Day after day, the rage began to brew. I take pride in being a sensible thinker who avoids impulsive behaviors. I parked on the curb a few blocks from my house, since I knew I couldn't face Rebecca in my current state. Confrontation may not be wise. Probably not. In fact, if it was a one-time error, I might be able to forgive and go on, but it wasn't. This has been going on for a year by the sounds of it. Rebecca remained a contented wife and mother. Throughout. The illusion was great sitting in my idling car. I concluded that this required a deliberate response. I would preserve outward normally, but come Monday I would take actions to terminate this charade and seek retribution. I was determined to cause as much legal and moral harm as possible to Eric Daniels and Rebecca Becky Thompson. They would face the consequences of their treason. The rest of the weekend was marked by my thorough demonstration of civility. I kept my emotions in check, making sure that none of my rage or irritation spilled over to my family. I intended to express my thoughts once I had all of the essential knowledge. I impatiently watched the hours pass until Monday morning dawned. When Monday arrived, I got up earlier than normal and left the house before 7:00 a.m. I knew I had a few hours before I could start dealing with my problems, but getting out of the home that morning was my top concern. I expected my sales manager, Larry Coleman, to be already in the office, so I went there to discuss taking time off for my condition. Our chat lasted more over 30 minutes. As I detailed my need for leave, I could tell he understood the circumstances with my family and happily he was sympathetic and agreed to my request. Larry was a great person and I enjoyed working with him. Shortly after 9:00 a.m., I called David Moore, a family lawyer, for help on a family situation. Knowing it wasn't his area of expertise, I wasn't shocked when he recommended Lydia Pankratz. Although I had only met Lydia a few times, I knew she was a great divorce lawyer. Her services would most likely be expensive, but at the time money was the least of my problems. I had a late afternoon appointment with Lydia. Knowing that I would be delayed, I called home to leave a message. To my astonishment, Emma responded. "Hi, Emma. Why are you home?" I inquired about Teacher Development Day. She responded sarcastically. "They always schedule them for Fridays or Mondays." Yes, I also noticed that. Listen, I have an appointment later today and won't be back until around 7, I believe. Can you tell Mom? Sure, Dad. By the way, are you all right? She inquired carefully. Yeah, I am fine. Why are you asking? I do not know, you appeared weird this weekend. You aren't sick, right? No, I lied. I am fine. It must be your overactive imagination. I chuckled after we hung up. I wondered if Rebecca had noticed my unusual conduct. She had not said anything, but perhaps she was being cautious. I'd have to be careful not to say too much too quickly. The encounter with Lydia was unexpected on multiple levels. To begin, in the event of a divorce, Rebecca would receive 50 of everything, regardless of the reason. The silver lining was that, given her salary, I probably wouldn't have to pay alimony unless I could establish infidelity. Given her reckless behavior, I imagine it would be difficult to acquire evidence to acquire custody of the children. I'd have to prove abuse, neglect, or some significant felony. In this jurisdiction, custody was frequently granted to the mother. Emma at 18 might make her own decision, but the 16-year-old would most likely remain with his mother for nearly 2 years. I was uncomfortable with that, but Lydia said it would be difficult to change. That's just how the system worked. That's when things became more interesting. Lydia knew I was committed to hold Rebecca and Gilson accountable, so she offered aid. Because Gilson was her supervisor, she proposed suing him and his employer as co-defendants in their divorce. Lydia presented a hefty monetary claim against them, aiding the fact that many were aware of their actions but did nothing. Most importantly, Rebecca would not gain from any of this money. Lydia dedicated to investigating Century Forward and starting divorce proceedings. At this point, I was free to choose the reasons for my divorce. Lydia argued that, given the predictability of their affairs, getting photographic evidence to enhance the case would not be too difficult or costly. I stated that I would consider it. When I arrived home that evening, Rebecca W. welcomed me enthusiastically, noting that dinner was in the oven and that she had prepared a glass of wine for me. Her behavior struck me as peculiar and I became skeptical. After changing and freshening up upstairs, I joined her at the table, where she also had a glass of wine. Jamie, I have some fantastic news. She replied with a big smile. She happily stated that she had been invited to the regional dealer conference in Maryville next month. Really, is it just you? I asked, anticipating the response. Well, no, she said uneasily. Eric and Kurt Jenkins will also be going. I see. How long does this convention last? 3 days, Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. I will be returning on Sunday. She responded, her nervousness clear. I remarked, you seem to be looking forward to it. Yes, it will be my first convention. I'm sure I'll learn a lot. She replied, her enthusiasm returning. Yes, I am certain you will. I replied with a touch of sarcasm. As I evaluated my ideas, I realized this could be the opportunity one had been looking for. She appeared to be setting herself up to be caught, so it's all good with you? She asked tentatively. Yes, sweetie, it is all right with me. I trust you. I know you wouldn't do anything inappropriate. I said with a straight face. I observed a slight flush on her cheeks before she stood up, leaned over the table and kissed me. Thank you, Jamie. I completed my dinner in peace while Rebecca went to the living room to watch some stupid television show. It seemed strange to me that I was neither offended nor angry, but simply numb. I just allowed my wife to leave town for 3 days to be with a man I disliked, but I felt nothing. The next 2 days went without incident, but I was preoccupied solely with work. My head was a jumble of ideas about what would come next. I could not quit thinking about Daniel and Emma. How would they respond if I spoke with their mother? Will they take offense with me? I tried everything I could to protect them from the repercussions, but all I could do was forsake my intentions and allow Rebecca to carry on. But deep inside I knew this wasn't the way out. Lydia called my office on Thursday morning to schedule an afternoon meeting. We decided on 3:00 and I came early to give her the newest info and get things started. I've made some decisions, Lydia. Something intriguing occurred on Monday. Rebecca added that she was asked to attend the Ford Regional Dealer Convention in Marysville in 3 weeks. She is accompanying Eric Gilson and another co-worker from their office. I said, waiting to gauge her response, no surprises. My sources have previously informed me that this has been under progress for some time. I think she finally accepted it on Monday. Lydia responded calmly on Monday. How did you know? I inquired. Curious. Well, it is my little secret Latin. Just say Rebecca isn't as intelligent as she believes she is. Lydia chuckled. I think we should try to get some evidence. Can images be used as evidence of adultery? I asked. Yes, absolutely. We know they rent the same hotel room every time, so it shouldn't be too tough. This week my friend will gather photographic proof to buttress our claim. But that is not all. Lydia smiled slyly. I saw her delighted smile and waited for the next bit of information. Century Ford is owned by Eric Gibson's father, Knox Gibson, as you are well aware. According to a reputable source, every employee's contract includes a morality provision, which will greatly simplify our supplementary lawsuit. In fact, it'll be a piece of cake. She remarked with a devilish grin. How much do you believe we can obtain from them? I inquired about my mean streak coming through. We might get between $500,000 and $1 million, but we definitely ask for more. Eric's father can definitely afford it. She laughed. I like the sound of this. I suppose the only drawback is the children. I can safeguard Emma, but there is nothing I can do for Daniel. I said, surprised by how swiftly things were moving. I know, and there's nothing I can do about it. Unless we find a judge who believes Rebecca is the worst, we will just have to cope with it. I apologize. I wish things weren't like this. She expressed genuine pity. Okay, Lydia, thank you for the groundwork. I'll let you know when and where the convention is, as well as the hotel where she'll be staying, just in case your husband doesn't get anything between now and then. I was fatigued. This entire ruse had exhausted me. I wanted to go home and sleep for a week or 3, thinking that everything would be done by then. Naturally, I knew it would not be. There was still a long way to travel. I made it through the next 3 weeks without raising any suspicions in Rebecca. Perhaps she wasn't paying attention, or she was so confident that she didn't care. On the eve before her departure, she packed and moved her luggage and travel tote to the front door in preparation for her morning departure. She had no notion what to expect that weekend. When I woke up on Thursday morning at my normal hour, Rebecca was already up and eating. She was plainly eager to depart hurriedly, hurrying around the kitchen. You're awake early, I remarked calmly. Yes, I just wanted to make sure everything was taken care of before I left. Do not worry about it. Emma will manage the housework and I will assist her on the weekend. I guess you'll be home on Sunday morning, I recommended. I'm not sure if it will be morning or afternoon. I will have to wait and see. It's Eric's automobile, so I'll let you know. She answered cautiously, avoiding my gaze. She knew what she was about to do, but didn't want to confront me or accept it to herself. She had no idea she'd be unable to escape this weekend. Have a good time and behave yourself, I replied with a tone of sarcasm. She gave me a quick glance before continuing with her clumsy efforts. I couldn't remember seeing her this nervous before. Perhaps she noticed my change in attitude and was concerned that I could know or suspect something. I couldn't be certain. I finished my coffee, kissed her lightly on the cheek and then departed for the workplace. I'd spend the entire day wondering if she suspected I knew something. It could ruin my surprise, which would be quite frustrating. I had not informed Lydia or anybody else about my plans for early Sunday morning. When I arrived at the workplace, I contacted Lydia, who responded quickly. Lydia, could you please confirm that we have images of Daniels and Rebecca together? I asked immediately. Yes, we have them, but I'm not sure you want to view them right now. Maybe after this is over, but for now let us handle it, okay? Her voice was quiet and clearly unhappy. I assumed the photographs were incriminating. The sole advantage was that it didn't matter if my little stunt on Sunday morning worked or not. The situation was previously resolved. Is the divorce paperwork ready? Yes, we can assist her whenever you say. I have a small surprise for her on Sunday morning, so I believe we should serve her at her parents' place on Monday morning. Can I confirm this with you on Sunday? I asked yes, but MC, you're not planning anything, reckless are you? She sounded concerned. No, absolutely not. I swear not to mess this up. I hoped my assurance brought comfort to this capable woman. I didn't want anything to disrupt my plans. Good, I am delighted to hear that. Take care, Jamie. I understand these are difficult times for you, but they will pass and you will move on. She spoke. Truly, Lydia. I couldn't do it without your aid. The hardest thing will be telling the kids on Saturday. I said I'm not looking forward to that. I'm certain you are not. Good luck. Call me or David, if you need anything. Okay, thanks, I said gently and hung up the phone. I pondered telling the kids that night, but ultimately decided against it. One of them might phone their mother to alert her, and I wanted to avoid that possibility. Rebecca called at 8:00 that evening, seeming upbeat. She was enjoying the convention and the various exhibits. Her room was pleasant and the restaurant had delicious meals. She spoke briefly with me before spending more time on the phone with Emma and Daniel. She gave us her room number 1228 after the children had gone to bed at their customary time of 10:00. I waited until I was certain they were asleep, before calling the motel and asking for room 1228. If Rebecca responds, I intend to simply wish her good night and say something pleasant. The phone rang 7 or 8 times with no answer. I hung up. Rebecca called again on Friday night about the same time and we had another brief talk before she spoke with Emma and Daniel. She spoke differently. This time, perhaps the convention's excitement was dissipating, or it could have been something else. On Saturday, she called earlier than usual, shortly before 6:00. Fortunately, we were all at home. Our talk was brief and not really intimate. She said that she was going out to supper with a large group and would not be back till late. I was not upset. It made things easier for me. When Emma, Daniel and I went down to eat, the table was extremely silent. We all looked to be immersed in our own thoughts. Finally, I realized I couldn't wait any longer. We cleared the table and loaded the dishwasher before I turned to face them both. I have some important things to discuss with you kids. I began. Daniel and Emma gazed at me as if they knew what this was about. There is no easy way to convey this, so I'll simply tell you what will happen. I dug into my pocket and took out 2 sparkling new house keys. These are your new keys to the house. The only other person who owns one is myself. Your mother will not return to our home. I eventually forced myself to speak. Emma gasped and Daniel's eyes widened as his lips dropped open. Over the last year, your mother has been having an affair with her supervisor, Eric Gilson. She betrayed me, you, and she made marriage vows. I can no longer live with her and I won't let her in this house. I halted. Oh Dad, oh no. Emma cried. Why did she do this? I'm not sure, but to be honest it's not the most pressing issue on my mind right now. I know this will hurt you. I can't help it. She's been seeing Mr. Daniels at least twice a week for the past year. That's over 100 times. My rage was starting to show and I noticed Daniel tremble somewhat. This convention she's attending is really a ruse, so they can spend the weekend together. They aren't fooling anyone. I spit. Dad. What is going to happen? Daniel inquired, still stunned by my remarks. I filed for divorce and your mother will be served with the papers as soon as she returns to town. Mr. Daniels will experience other events as well, but don't worry about that right now. I'll let you know as things happen. I paused again. I'm sure my statements in the last 5 minutes have left them reeling. Does this mean I'll never see Mom again? Daniel inquired on the edge of tears. No, Daniel, I would not do that to you. I understand how important she is to you, and I would not do that. You will most likely start out living with her when you're 18, like Emma. You will be able to view both of us whenever you want, Emma. You can choose where you want to reside. It will be your decision. I responded, glancing at my daughter's sorrowful eyes. This is not good, Dad. It splits the family up. This is not good. She spoke through her tears. Yeah, I understand. Unfortunately, the courts make these judgments, not me. This was something I gave serious consideration to. I suppose I could have informed your mother what I knew and just carried on with our lives, but I couldn't do it. I must admit that I am really upset at your mother. She cheated us. She lied to us. I don't think I can simply turn the other cheek. I confessed. Daniel turned and walked silently up the stairs to his room, closing the door behind him. I believed he was in shock. I decided to go up and sit with him for a bit after he'd had time to digest what was going on. I turned to Emily, who stared at me with sadness before walking up and hugging me. I'm very sorry, Father. I understand how much this must hurt. I cannot believe she would do this again. She cried. I drew back and glanced at my daughter again. Emma nodded. Her eyes were downcast. Tell me, please. I said softly. That happened 4 years ago. I recently started having red days and had some issues with them. One morning in class I began to get severe cramping. I went to the nurse's office and she sent me home with a note from my mother telling me what to buy. When I walked in the front door, I noticed her looking at me. She, together with Mr. Morissette, was sitting on the couch. Mom's underpants was on the floor. I think I shouted and fled upstairs to my room. I heard them conversing and wandering about the room before the door banged. A few minutes later, Mom entered my room. Emma couldn't take it and burst into tears for real. What happens next? I had to wait patiently as Emma recounted the events in her own words. Mom warned me that if I informed you or anybody else, you would divorce her and I would never see you again. She claimed that courts always favor mothers in custody cases and that you'd be so angry with her that you'd definitely move away and I'd never see you again. She looked up at me and shook her head. I was afraid, Father. I believed her. I couldn't stomach losing you. Not then, not ever. I guess. I promised Mom that I wouldn't tell anyone except Daniel until now. I threw my arm over her again and brought her closer. That cunning woman had used Emma's love for me to compel her into quiet. So Daniel's was neither the first nor the only one. I began to wonder how many others there could have been. How could I have been so blind? How could she do that without me suspecting anything? Was I truly so oblivious, or was she more crafty than I had previously given her credit for, Emma? I don't know how else to tell it, but I adore you and I swear to do everything in my ability to be a good father, no matter what the future brings. You've reached an age when you can make your own decisions, and I want you to know that, no matter what you do, I'll support you. My feelings for you will never alter. I didn't think I had anything else to say. I admitted. Thank you, Dad. I believe you and want to stay with. You're in need of someone and I suppose you're stuck with me. She said with a sorrowful smile. We hugged once more. I should probably go upstairs and talk with Daniel. I'm sure he's going through a difficult period too. You indicated that you had told him about Mr. Morissette. Yes, about a month later Daniel observed Mom and I acting strangely, and he mentioned that she seemed weird. So I told him what I had witnessed. How did he respond? I inquired. Oddly, it didn't feel like a big surprise to him. Perhaps he suspected something beforehand. Emma reflected. I assumed he had accused me of lying, but he said nothing at all. He simply went silent and kept it to himself. I nodded and got up, headed for the stairs in Daniel's room. I gently knocked before twisting the handle and gingerly pulling open the door. Daniel was sitting on his bed, staring blankly out the window. He took a time to recognize my presence, but then remained mute. "I apologize, Daniel. You know I never want to harm you. I hope you understand why I couldn't keep things as they were," I said softly. He nodded and turned to face me. "I'm sorry too. Father, Mom has injured many people, hasn't she?" He whispered, "Yes, she has. I'm not sure what will happen next, but your grandparent will probably be upset." I responded, "Why, Dad? Why did she do this?" "I do not know, Daniel. She never mentioned that she was unhappy or unsatisfied with her life. Not once." I repeated, "I detest her." He abruptly exclaimed, "No, Daniel, do not say she loves you. I'm certain of it. There is something else going on, something I do not understand. Perhaps she doesn't either. However, don't allow rage dominate you. I'm sure you love her. Perhaps with time you will be able to forgive her. She would never want to harm you or Emma." I consoled him as tenderly as I could. He turned away crestfallen. I put my hand on his shoulder for reassurance. After a few moments, I stood up and silently exited his room, closing the door behind me. When I woke up on Sunday morning, everything went crazy. Rebecca attempted to phone the house, but I had already taken Emma and Daniel out for breakfast to avoid her. We weren't very hungry, but leaving the house seemed vital. I turned off my phone and requested Emma to do the same, to keep Rebecca from pestering her anymore. I told the kids about the early morning call and Emma giggled. Daniel smiled in approval. Despite their encouragement, I couldn't shake my anxiety. After breakfast, we drove to the Riverside Park and went for a walk. Strangely, we all seemed to feel a little better, possibly because the anticipation of what was ahead had been briefly alleviated. Emma and Daniel knew exactly what was going to happen and when. Personally, I could not get rid of the knot in my gut. I had initiated a process that would result in the dissolution of my marriage and our family. Today I had two vital tasks: chat to my parents and phone Lydia to explain my behavior. The thought of speaking with George and Amy Rebecca's parents filled me with fear. We were close and they loved their grandchildren. I was unsure how they would react or which side they would take. I chose to wait till Rebecca made her move. She would eventually need to find a place to stay, and I assumed she would return home. I called Lydia and Pancrats first. When I told her about my little stunt, she chuckled at my bravado. "I'd rather not have that wake-up call," she chuckled. "I hope it felt wonderful, Jamie." "Not really. It was only petty vengeance, I suppose, but she now knows and understands some of the repercussions." I responded with a trace of wrath in my voice. "And the children?" "Jamie, I spoke with them last night and I believe they are managing it well. They aren't happy, but they understand. We will have to wait and see how it affects them in the long run," I stated, "but there's more." "What?" Lydia sounded surprised. "Emma informed me she discovered her mother with another man around 4 years ago. They were obviously in the midst of something. Rebecca intimidated Emma, claiming she would divorce me and stop seeing me if she spoke up. She blackmailed her into silence." I completed. "My God. Would she do that?" Lydia asked incredulously. I thought I recognized her clearly. I did not. "She isn't who I thought she was. She's a vindictive woman," I replied, more remorseful than angry. Lydia must have wondered what would happen next. I suppose after a little silence, she spoke again. "Stay close to Emma and Daniel, Jamie. They will need your help during this difficult time. It's going to be tough for them for a time. Stick with them," she finished. "Thank you for everything, Lydia. When I find out where Rebecca is, I'll notify you so you can serve her." I closed my cell phone once we finished talking. Calling my folks was going to be difficult. The call with my parents was brief. I explained the issue and their primary worry was for Emma and Daniel. I comforted them about my chats with the kids last night and how well they seemed today. That appeared to calm my mother, and they both promised to talk to us later. When things calmed down, I wondered when that would happen. I turned off my cell phone again. It had beeped indicating a waiting call, most likely from Rebecca. I wasn't prepared to speak to her today. Emma, Daniel and I sat on a picnic seat in the park, and I mentioned that I didn't want to be near our house for a few hours. I anticipated their mother to rush home and try to enter. Once she discovered her key useless, she'd undoubtedly make a scene. I proposed we go through the countryside and stay away until well after dinner, then return. They agreed, and we debated where we should go. We decided to visit an outdoor fair in a little town a few miles south. The food was a nice diversion for us. We ate hot dogs to tide us over till dinner and had a great time munch a conventional county fair. It helped us get our mind off our problems and focus on something else. We didn't get back to town until nearly 7:00 when we stopped at a nice restaurant for dinner. We were aware that we would eventually have to face the changes in our lives, but on that final day we could avoid all of that and enjoy a moment of peace. We reached home around 9:00. Rebecca was nowhere to be found and the home was dark. We turned on the lights when we entered the garage after parking. Everything appeared to have remained unchanged since we departed for breakfast that morning. The children withdrew to their rooms to prepare for bedtime. I turned on the television but found nothing interesting, so I decided to call it a night. Restlessness gripped me, as I considered what the next day might bring. I expected consequences from my phone call and the delivering of divorce papers. It was simply a matter of time. Monday morning I reconnected the phones. I didn't anticipate Rebecca to phone this early, but I was mistaken. The phone rang nearly immediately with no call Idaho. I responded cautiously. "Hello," I greeted Jamie. "Please, we need to talk." Rebecca spoke. "What's there to talk about?" I responded quietly, mindful of the children. "Oh God, Jamie, you know what I could explain." "It's not as you think," she pleaded. "This is the second time you've mentioned that." "What do you think?" I believe I challenged. "Unlike an affair, it was simply a poor mistake. Please do not let our marriage end because of this," she pleaded. "You must think I'm the biggest alive, Rebecca. I know you've been seeing that guy Daniels for at least a year, and now I hear Francis Morissette is also on your list. We have images and all of the documentation we need. This is going to be messy, Rebecca, and it's all on you. It's about to turn ugly." I promise you that I hung up the phone and then unplugged it again. I went to work and informed Larry Coleman that I was filing for divorce. I asked him not to answer any calls from my wife. If she called, he agreed and went straight to Gloria at the switchboard to tell her back at my office. I attempted to bury myself in papers. I remained focused until around 11:00 a.m. when my phone called. It was George Becky, my father-in-law. "Good morning, George, I can guess while you are calling. I apologize for not warning you and Amy." I replied, hoping to get ahead of the conversation. "I think I understand, but I want to hear it from you. Jamie. You've always been honest with me, so tell me what the hell happened." He asked directly. I notified Rebecca's father, George, of my concerns about Daniels, how I learned about her affair with him and the unexpected finding of her second relationship with Morissette. After recounting her actions, there was a lengthy pause on the line. "My God." He finally muttered, his voice hushed. "I never imagined she was capable of such things. Are you really confident of this, Jamie?" He asked, desperate for reassurance. "I apologize, George, I wish I wasn't, but I have photographic evidence." I acted with sympathy for him. He deserved more from his daughter. She is currently residing with me. "Jamie, are you planning to file for divorce?" he inquired. "Yes, the documentation is ready. She will be served at either her employment or I'm sorry, but that may happen at your location." I apologized. "I understand this will not only harm her but also crush her mother. I understand it's not your fault, but never mind. I hope we can still see the grandchildren. Jamie, he spoke with a spark of hope. Absolutely, George, this isn't about you or Amy. I would never keep you or the children away. You are always welcome here. I assured him. Truly thank you, Jamie. I apologize, but thank you, he said. Sadly, before hanging up, I felt emotionally tired after replacing the phone. I expected more experiences like these in the coming weeks and months. I needed to get myself ready for what was to come. I discovered that Rebecca had gone to work that morning and, astonishingly, was still employed. Daniels hadn't imagined the consequences would catch up with him, so he went on as usual. Lydia promptly dispatched a process server after confirming my wife's on-time arrival at work before she even had her morning coffee. Rebecca had divorce papers in her hands. Witnesses stated that she instantly broke down and fled the building, most likely to her parents' home. The real drama occurred shortly after when Eric and Knox Gilson received legal notices. These expressed my intention to sue for damages, citing alienation of affection and corporate carelessness in implementing morality rules in specific employee contracts. The claims requested $5 million in punitive and compensatory damages, and thus the spectacle began. Later I learned that Knox Daniels had a significant disagreement with his son Eric and cut him off altogether. No more lucrative jobs, no more rescuing wives from angry spouses. Eric would also lose his fortune if he didn't get his act together. Knox had indulged his kid for more than 2 decades, but he had finally reached his limit. The adult man-child would eventually have to fend for himself. Eric did what was completely predictable. He went out and got drunk, having nowhere else to go. After getting tossed out of the dealership, he retreated to his townhouse, where he spent many days alone. I thought that legal proceedings would be slow. Rebecca naively chose to dispute the divorce until Lydia's lawyer presented the proof we had, including photographs which quickly silenced Rebecca's objections. Lydia would try to minimize my financial losses, but she might finish up with half of everything as a prize for betrayal. However, the week went by terribly slowly. I went to work. My mind was not on it. Larry was understanding, but I could not expect his patience to endure forever. I needed to start planning for my future as a single man and lone dad, which felt daunting. On Saturday, while cutting the backyard lawn, I heard a disturbance in the driveway. The automobile door banged, followed by an urgent knock on my front door. Emma and Daniel were not home, so I wandered around the house and met Eric Gilson. He seems to have gone through a horrific ordeal. His untidy appearance and concerned demeanor informed me that something bad had happened. That was the last thing I remembered before he hit me hard with his right hand. The next thing I remember is regaining consciousness in the hospital. It wasn't a dramatic awakening, but a gradual return to consciousness. I was resting on my back, experiencing a dull agony from my brain to my crotch. It took me more than a day to begin feeling fully alert. I slipped in and out of consciousness, catching glimpses of the present. At some point, I realized that someone was by my side. I could feel their presence, but could not bring myself to open my eyes, or maybe I just didn't want to. My skull felt as weighty as 2 marbles rolling around in a tin can. I heard a familiar voice speaking, but couldn't determine who it was. I fought to recall what had brought me here, but then I remembered Gibson's face and the hit from his fist. A day later I discovered that my mother and Emma had rarely left my side during my stay in the ICU. I tried to grin at them. However, it was painful. I hoped they understood how appreciative I was for their presence. I smiled again as I barely heard Emma mention Daniel after school visit. Despite the discomfort, it took more than a week before I felt clear enough to speak with my doctor. He began from the beginning. I suffered a concussion after colliding with the wooden frame of my garage door. During the struggle with Gilson, my right shoulder was dislocated and there was serious bruising in the upper arm. I had 3 or 4 cracked ribs. My kidneys and other vital organs were extensively bruised. My testicles were severely enlarged, raising fears about possible injury. They finally had to remove my spleen because it had ruptured. My injuries were the result of a single punch from an irate, Eric Gilson, followed by him kicking me repeatedly while I lay unconscious on the ground. Olivia Parker saved me. She witnessed the majority of the incident and yelled loudly from her kitchen window, causing Daniels to realize he was being watched. He rushed back to his car, reversed out of our driveway and drove dangerously down the street. Olivia quickly called 911 and I was rushed to the hospital. Olivia and another neighbor recognized Gilson and documented his license plate as he sped away, almost missing a mother pushing a stroller. There aren't many 1964 white Ford Galaxy convertibles in our area. So it wasn't long before Daniels was observed leaving a bar hastily in a fitting ending. Daniels was arrested for DUI and resisting arrest. His woes did not stop there. In the holding cell, they linked Olivia Parker's assault report to my hospital admittance. Following questioning, Olivia, Gilson was charged with aggravated assault with intent and criminal trespass. Daniels tried to phone his father from jail and justice caught up with him. KNX Gilson refused to speak to him. I wish I could have watched it, but I was asleep and having surgery to remove my spleen. 2 days after I recovered consciousness, a plainclothes officer came to see me and asked for my statement. I described what I could recall, which was mostly an angry expression and a forceful hit. When asked about the cause for the assault, I described Eric's conduct against my wife, a divorce and the subsequent court fights. Before leaving, the officer nodded and expressed gratitude. Rebecca received a harsh divorce settlement. I'll buy her share of our home. She received the bare minimum with no alimony. Knox had fired both Eric and Rebecca, as well as given them a nasty lecture about their role in my injuries. She began job seeking after our divorce was finalized. Her reputation suffered in some quarters, making me wonder if she'd find acceptable work in town. Then lives with Rebecca now, but Emma suggests their bond isn't as strong as it once was. I see Daniel on the weekends. Fortunately, the judge was lenient on that front. He appears resilient, but he is not the same child I remember from happier times. Emma is my rock, keeping me on track. She oversees the household, my diet and my exercise regimen. It's almost like having a second mom. My parents have been consistent in their support throughout this time. Their presence has been important recently. I couldn't handle any more pressure. George and Amy remain supportive friends, albeit disappointed in Rebecca. She is their only kid, so they feel bound to support her. Daniel's presence brings them comfort and they spoil him in some ways, which I am fine with. My first priority is Daniel's well-being. Throughout all of this, Emma pays them an occasional visit. Her connection with her mother appears to be difficult. Although they have resumed communication, the legal cases will not go to court. According to my lawyer friends, Dave and Lydia Knox Daniels will make sure they settle for a large sum. I've been securing my financial future for years, despite taxes and legal bills. I'm already preparing to fund Emma and Daniel's college education and purchase them a car. This chaotic situation will at the very least provide some positive results. Physically, I've healed as much as possible. Despite losing my spleen, my kidneys, ribs and shoulder are mostly recovered. I'm currently having physiotherapy 3 times per week and want to continue for the foreseeable future. I still have everyday aches and pains of varying intensity. My doctor estimates that my testicles are approximately 80 functioning. However, I have not tested them yet. I am not especially interested in pursuing partnerships at the moment. Once the settlement money arrives, I intend to buy something extremely special for Tom and Olivia. Tom helped me when I needed him, and Olivia most likely saved my life. I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude with something extremely extraordinary. I often wonder what is ahead. Rebecca's acts continue to have a significant impact on me, but I feel that with time I will recover from the worst of them. I attempted to quit from Polo Industries, but Larry demanded that I take an indefinite leave instead. I'm about to get a large sum of money and I've been thinking about how to spend it wisely. I believe I found the answer. Frank Clay, one of my longest clients and a friend from my early days in sales, wants to retire and sell his building supply business. It's a stable business with a decent mix of retail and construction clients, and the Build Right buying group helps it compete with larger retailers. Dave Moore and I intend to discuss the possibility with Frank. When Daniel learned about my plans, he instantly indicated an interest in working weekends and summers. Keeping him close is a no-brainer for me. I want to make sure he is well supported during these difficult adolescent years, especially given the family issues we are navigating. Looking at Knox and Eric Gilson, I see the effects of not being actively involved in your children. I've had plenty of time to ponder on what happened to me and my family. I'll admit I took it personally and desired complete vengeance. That emotion has not changed. If I had only had to deal with Daniels, things might have turned out differently. I can see how he could charm someone like Rebecca. However, discovering Moret's blackmailing of our daughter dashed any hopes of clemency. Dave stated that Eric will serve 2 to 4 years for his attack on me. We explored pursuing a legal complaint, but there is nothing left to recover. His father had disowned him. He is unemployed with no prospects. When he retires at 50, his future appears grim. There's no other way to damage him. KNX Daniels unexpectedly paid me a visit during my recovery. He apologized for everything, even his son's behavior. I accepted his earnest apology. He was well aware of both the mental and physical consequences. We shook hands and my view of Mr. Daniels Sr. improved slightly. So that's the story, a terrible one, without a question. I once thought I had the perfect family. Looking back, I can recall our joyful times or be angry. Perhaps one day I'll focus on the former. For now I'm dealing with the latter. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.